Picture this scene for a moment. The world as we know it has ended. The mountains have crumbled, the oceans have dried, and every single human being, from the very first to the very last, is standing together on one massive plain. There's no shade, no shelter, no escape. The sun is brought so close that it burns with an intensity no one has ever felt before. The messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, told us that on that day people will sweat according to their deeds. Some will sweat up to their ankles, some to their knees, some to their waists, and others will be drowning in it completely. Can you imagine the fear, the panic? Parents will abandon their children. Husbands will abandon their wives. Brothers and sisters will turn away from each other. As Allah tells us in the Quran, on the day a man will flee from his brother, and his mother, and his father, and his wife, and his children. For every person that day will be a matter adequate for him. Surah Abasa 80:34-37. Everyone will be thinking only about themselves, and in that chaos, in that unimaginable terror, there will be no shade at all, except one, the shade of Allah's throne. Now imagine being one of those rare, blessed people sitting under the most peaceful shade on that scorching day, safe and protected, while the rest of humanity trembles. What a gift, what an honor, what a mercy from Allah. But here's the question, who are those people? The Prophet Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, in a hadith agreed upon by both Bukhari and Muslim, told us that Allah will grant his shade to 7 types of people, 7 groups, not kings or billionaires, not famous celebrities, not the people we glorify in dunya. No, they are ordinary people, but with extraordinary faith, sincerity, and choices. People like you and me who decided to live differently. In this video, right here on The Inspired Muslim, we're going to take a journey through these 7 categories, one by one. And we're not just going to list them. We'll pause to reflect on what each one means, how it applies to our daily lives, and how you and I can strive to be counted among them. Because the truth is, this hadith is not just a reminder, it's a roadmap. It's Allah showing us a path to safety on the hardest day ever. And if we truly take these qualities to heart, maybe, just maybe, you and I will be sitting under that shade when the day of judgment arrives. So stay with me, and let's walk through this life-changing hadith together. This is The Inspired Muslim, and today we're talking about the 7 people Allah will shade on the day of judgment. The leader, the very first category, the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. Mentioned is the just leader. Why start here? Because justice is one of the foundations of Allah's creation. Allah himself is Al-Adl, the most just. And when a leader reflects even a fraction of that justice on earth, it becomes an act so beloved to Allah that he promises them his shade on the day of judgment. Now, when we say leader, don't think only of kings, presidents, or rulers. Of course, they are directly included, because when someone is given authority over people and they rule with fairness, without corruption or oppression, that is a huge responsibility. But this also applies to anyone who holds authority in any space. A parent leading a home, a teacher guiding students, a manager responsible for employees, even you leading your own soul, being fair in your decisions, fair in your dealings, fair in how you treat others. The Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, once said, "The most beloved of people to Allah on the day of judgment and the closest to him will be the just leader." Tirmidhi. That's how honored they are. But on the flip side, the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, also warned that the most hated and furthest from Allah will be the unjust leader. So the stakes are incredibly high. Think of Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., one of the greatest examples of a just leader. He used to walk the streets of Medina at night to see if anyone was suffering, if anyone was hungry, if anyone needed help. He feared Allah so much that he would cry at the thought of being accountable for his people. He once said, "If a mule were to stumble in Iraq, I would fear that Allah would hold me accountable for not paving the road for it." Subhanallah, that is justice. That is responsibility. Now, let's bring this closer to our daily lives. You might be thinking, but I'm not a leader, so how does this apply to me? The truth is, we are all leaders in some way. The Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Every one of you is a shepherd, and every one of you will be asked about his flock." Bukhari, Muslim. If you're a parent, you're a leader over your children. Are you fair with them, or do you show favoritism? If you're a teacher, are you grading fairly, or letting bias control your judgment? If you're a boss, are you treating your employees with dignity or exploiting them? Even in friendships, do you treat people with fairness, or do you bend the truth when it benefits you? Justice is not about big political power only. It's about the everyday choices we make. Choosing fairness when it's easier to cheat. Choosing honesty when lying would be simpler. Choosing to defend someone when they're being wronged, even if it's unpopular. On the day of judgment, when leaders and people in power will be held to account, those who were fair, in big ways and small, will be invited under Allah's shade. So the reflection for us here is simple but powerful. Am I fair? Am I just in my role as a leader, even in the small areas of life Allah has entrusted me with? Because every act of justice is noticed by Allah, and every act of injustice will be exposed on that day. May Allah make us people of fairness and grant us His shade through justice, even if it's in the smallest of responsibilities. Ameen. A youth who grew up worshipping Allah. The second group that will be shaded under Allah's throne is a young person who spent their youth in the worship of Allah. Subhanallah. Think about that for a moment. Youth is the time when desires are strongest, when temptations are everywhere, when the pull of the dunya feels irresistible. It's the age of energy, exploration, ambition, and often distraction. Yet Allah says, if a young person chooses Him over all that noise, if they choose Salah over sin, Quran over wasting time, modesty over temptation, that youth will be honored with His shade on the day of judgment. Why? Because it's harder. It's easy to say, I'll worship Allah later in life, when I'm older, when I've enjoyed my youth. But the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, is telling us that those who don't wait, those who dedicate their youth to Allah, are incredibly special in His sight. Let's take an example from history. Have you heard of the young men of the cave, Ashab al-Kahf, mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf? They were young men who stood up against a society drowning in disbelief and corruption. They chose to leave behind comfort, popularity, and even safety, just to protect their iman. And Allah honored them by preserving their story for all eternity in the Quran. That's the power of youth devoted to Allah. Now think about the Sahaba. Many of them were so young when they accepted Islam and dedicated themselves to it. Ali ibn Abi Talib, R.A., accepted Islam as a child. Musab ibn Umair, R.A., was a wealthy, handsome young man, beloved in Makkah, but he gave all of it up to carry Islam to Medina. These young men and women remind us that worshiping Allah at a young age has a beauty like no other. So what does this mean for us today? If you are young, this is your golden opportunity. This is the time to build habits of salah, dhikr, Quran, modesty, and service to others. Every struggle you go through now, every temptation you resist, is heavy on the scale in the sight of Allah. And if you are older, don't think you're excluded. Encourage and guide the youth around you, your children, siblings, students, community members. Supporting them in worship makes you share in the reward. The reality is, the day of judgment will be filled with people who wasted their youth chasing desires, but the ones under the throne of Allah will be those who said, Ya Allah, my energy, my strength, my time, it's for you. And before we move to the next category, let me pause and invite you to something important. If you find value in reminders like this, then make sure you subscribe to the Inspired Muslim. That way, you stay connected to content that uplifts your heart, keeps you mindful of the Akhirah, and helps us walk this journey together. So, my dear brothers and sisters, let's take inspiration here. Whatever age we are, we can still dedicate ourselves to Allah. But for the youth especially, this is your chance to shine. May Allah make every young Muslim a light for this ummah, and grant them the honor of His shade on the day of judgment. Ameen. The one whose heart is attached to the mosque. The third group that will be shaded by Allah's throne are those whose hearts are attached to the mosque. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't mean someone who just visits the masjid once a week for Jumu'ah and leaves. It means someone who longs for the house of Allah. Their heart feels at home there. When they are outside, they're already thinking about when they'll return. The Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "The most beloved places to Allah are the mosques, and the most hated places to Allah are the markets." Muslim. Why? Because the masjid is the place where we connect with Him, where we put down the burdens of the dunya, where we find real peace. Think of Bilal, R.A., the beloved muadhin of the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. His heart was so attached to the masjid that when he would call the adhan, his voice would shake the hearts of believers. Even after the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, passed away, Bilal couldn't stay in Medina because the call to prayer without the messenger alive broke his heart. That's what it means to love the masjid. It's not just a building. It's a home for the soul. But here's the thing. Having your heart attached to the mosque doesn't mean you have to live inside of it. It means you prioritize it. You feel drawn to it. You miss it when you're away. It could be through your 5 daily prayers in congregation, your Quran recitation, your dhikr, your dua, even serving the mosque by cleaning it, supporting it, or teaching in it connects your heart to it. And it's not only for men. Women can also have their hearts attached to the house of Allah. In fact, the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Do not prevent the female servants of Allah from going to the mosques of Allah." Bukhari Muslim. Even if a sister prays mostly at home, she can still support her local masjid, love it, and keep her heart attached to the remembrance of Allah. So, what's the reflection for us? Ask yourself, when the adhan is called, do I feel pulled toward the masjid, or do I feel like it's a burden? Do I schedule my life around prayer, or do I try to squeeze prayer into my life? On the day of judgment, when others are desperate for shade, those whose hearts were tied to the masjid will find safety under Allah's throne. And that shows us something powerful. If you make the house of Allah your home in this world, Allah will make His throne your home in the next. And before I continue, let me pause to remind you, if this reflection is touching your heart, take a moment to subscribe to The Inspired Muslim. This is where we share reminders that reconnect us with Allah and push us to live with purpose. Don't miss out on building that connection. May Allah make our hearts always long for His houses, and may He gather us under His throne just like we gather in His mosques. Ameen. Two people who love each other for the sake of Allah. The fourth category of people who will be shaded on the Day of Judgment are two people who love each other purely for the sake of Allah. They meet upon that love, and they part upon that love. This one is so beautiful because it shows us that even our relationships, our friendships, can be a path to Jannah. Loving someone for Allah's sake means that your bond isn't built on money, status, looks, or benefits. It's built on something eternal. Both of you want to please Allah, help each other in deen, and walk together toward Jannah. The Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, told us, on the Day of Judgment, Allah will say, "Where are those who loved each other for my glory? Today I will shade them in my shade when there is no shade but mine." Muslim. Subhanallah. Imagine Allah calling you out personally on that day because you loved someone purely for Him. Let's think about examples. The bond between Abu Bakr, R.A., and the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, was a love for Allah's sake. Abu Bakr gave his wealth, his loyalty, his time, even risking his life, not because of worldly benefit, but because he loved the Messenger. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, for Allah. Another example is the Ansar and the Muhajirun. When the early Muslims migrated to Medina, the Ansar literally opened their homes, their businesses, their hearts to strangers. Why? Because they loved their brothers and sisters for Allah's sake. That's the kind of love that will last beyond this world. Now let's pause for a reflection. What are most friendships today built on? Jokes, entertainment, shared interests, maybe even sin. But ask yourself, if that person doesn't bring me closer to Allah, will they be there with me on the Day of Judgment? Real friends are the ones who remind you to pray, who check on your iman, who pull you away from sin, who are happy to see you succeed in dunya and akhirah. And it goes both ways. Be that kind of friend to someone else. When you call them, don't just gossip. Remind them of Allah. When you meet, don't just waste time. Share something beneficial, even if it's small. When you part ways, leave them with dua. This is what it means to meet and part upon love for Allah. On the day when the sun is scorching and everyone is desperate, Allah will call those who loved each other for Him and bring them under His shade. Imagine being with your closest friend, sitting in comfort, smiling together under the throne of Allah. What greater honor could there be? And right here, my dear brothers and sisters, I want to say, if you're finding benefit in this reminder, don't forget to subscribe to The Inspired Muslim. Together, we're building a community of hearts that love each other for Allah's sake, reminding and supporting one another toward Jannah. May Allah grant us friendships that are sincere, pure, and lasting beyond this dunya, and may He gather us all under His throne on the Day of Judgment as people who loved one another for His sake. Ameen. A man who resists the call of a woman of beauty and status out of fear of Allah. The fifth category mentioned by the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, is a man who is tempted by a woman of beauty and status, but he says, "I fear Allah," Subhanallah, let's pause here. Out of all the desires Allah placed in human beings, one of the strongest is the desire between men and women. And when you combine beauty, attraction, opportunity, and status, it becomes one of the greatest tests. To walk away from that kind of temptation is no small thing. That's why the reward is so huge. Allah promises His shade on the Day of Judgment. Think of the story of Prophet Yusuf a.s. He was young, handsome, alone in a foreign land, and the wife of a powerful man tried to seduce him. She closed the doors, called him, and made it easy. Yusuf a.s. could have said yes and no one would know, but his heart was filled with fear of Allah, and he said, "I seek refuge in Allah." Surah Yusuf 12:23. He chose prison over sin, dignity over desire, taqwa over temptation, and Allah honored him. That's exactly what this category is about. A man, or by extension a woman, who is faced with temptation but chooses Allah instead. Now think about our world today. We don't even need someone physically calling us. Temptation is everywhere, on our screens, in our pockets, on social media, at school, at work. The culture tells us, follow your heart, do what feels good, no one has to know. But the believer says, Allah is watching, I fear Him. That's strength, that's real honor. And notice how the hadith says, a woman of beauty and status. Why? Because when temptation comes with social or worldly advantage, wealth, popularity, power, it's even harder to resist. Saying no in that moment isn't weakness, it's true power. It's choosing the eternal over the temporary. Let's be honest. This is a tough struggle. But every time you lower your gaze, every time you walk away from sin, every time you delete that chat, every time you resist that temptation purely for Allah, know this: on the Day of Judgment, while others are sweating and panicking, you might be under His throne because of that one decision. And this is exactly why we need these reminders. If you're finding strength in this message, don't forget to subscribe to the Inspired Muslim. This is where we remind each other to hold on to Allah's rope, to resist temptation, and to strive for His reward, together as a family. So reflect, my dear brothers and sisters. Temptation may be hidden or public, but the reward for resisting it is the same, Allah's protection on the hardest day. May Allah grant us the strength of Yusuf a.s., keep our hearts firm, and honor us with His shade. Ameen. A person who gives charity in secret. The sixth category, the Prophet. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. Mentioned is a person who gives charity so secretly that their left hand doesn't even know what their right hand has given. Subhanallah, just picture that. A person so sincere, so private, that even their own body isn't fully aware of what they've done. No showing off, no posting it online, no expecting praise. Just pure, hidden charity, done only for Allah. Why is this so special? Because charity is powerful, but charity with sincerity is on another level. Allah tells us in the Quran, if you disclose your charitable expenditures, they are good. But if you conceal them and give them to the poor, it is better for you, and He will remove from you some of your misdeeds. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:271. Hidden charity purifies the heart. It kills the ego. It reminds us that we're not doing this to look good in front of people. We're doing it because we want Allah's mercy. Think of the companions. Umar ibn al-Khattab, RRA, once tried to outdo Abu Bakr, RRA, in giving charity. Umar gave half his wealth and thought he had beaten Abu Bakr. But when asked, Abu Bakr had given all of his wealth. And he did it without pride, without seeking recognition, purely for Allah. That's why Abu Bakr was so beloved. Now, charity isn't only about money. Yes, wealth is part of it, but charity can be your time, your knowledge, your skills, even a smile. But the key is do it sincerely, and if you can, do it quietly. That moment when you help someone and no one knows but Allah, that is priceless. And here's something practical. The next time you want to give charity, try giving in a way where no one finds out. Put money in a donation box quietly. Send support anonymously. Pay for someone's groceries secretly. Those small hidden acts might be the very deeds that save you on the day of judgment. On that day, when people will be desperate, when every deed will be exposed, those who gave for Allah alone will be honored with His shade. Imagine the feeling. All your private acts of charity, the ones nobody ever clapped for, are the very reason you're sitting under Allah's throne, safe and protected. And my dear brothers and sisters, before we continue, if these reminders are touching your heart, make sure to subscribe to The Inspired Muslim. Just like hidden charity, supporting Islamic reminders has ripple effects in ways only Allah knows. Be part of this journey with us. May Allah make us people of generosity who give secretly, sincerely, and consistently. And may He shade us on the day of judgment because of it. Ameen. The one who remembers Allah in seclusion and cries. The final group, the Prophet. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. Mentioned is perhaps the most intimate and emotional of all. A person who remembers Allah when alone, and their eyes overflow with tears. Think about that for a moment. No crowd, no masjid full of people, no one watching, just you, alone, remembering your Lord. And suddenly your heart softens, your eyes fill, and tears fall. That's the sincerity Allah loves. Why is this person so special? Because tears shed in private are proof of a heart that truly feels Allah's greatness. It's not for show. It's not an act. It's pure, raw connection between you and your Creator. The Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Two eyes will never be touched by the fire, an eye that shed tears out of fear of Allah, and an eye that stayed vigilant, guarding in the path of Allah." Tirmidhi. Those tears, even if it's just one tear, can be your ticket to Jannah. Imagine standing before Allah on the day of judgment and finding that your private moments of weeping are what saved you from punishment. Subhanallah. Many of the pious predecessors would cry when reciting Quran, when making dua, or when reflecting on Allah's mercy and punishment. Umar ibn al-Khattab, RA, had lines etched into his face from how often he cried in prayer. Even the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, himself would cry in tahajjud, his beard soaked in tears as he begged Allah for forgiveness, not just for himself, but for us, his ummah. This is something we can all practice. You don't need to force tears, but take moments to sit quietly with Allah. Turn off the noise, hold the Quran in your hands, or simply raise your hands in dua. Reflect on His blessings, reflect on your sins, reflect on how much we need Him and how much He has given us. If tears come, even a single drop, know that Allah treasures it. And remember, on that day when the sun is above our heads and everyone is desperate for relief, those secret tears shed in dunya will become shade under Allah's throne. What an honor, what a reward. My dear brothers and sisters, this concludes the 7 people who will be shaded on the day of judgment. Each one teaches us something powerful about sincerity, patience, humility, and love for Allah. Let's all strive to be among them, even if it's just through one of these qualities. Before we close, if this series has inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to The Inspired Muslim. Support reminders that soften hearts and bring us closer to Allah. And most importantly, act on what you've learned, because knowledge without action is like a tree without fruit. May Allah make us from those 7 blessed groups, protect us from the heat of the day of judgment, and grant us shade, safety, and closeness to Him. Ameen.